But anyway, just some notes from the meeting, and it was very educational from my standpoint. So I think it was very good to sit down and directly with Mr. Rogoff and talk about what's going on. So first of all, on the EIS process, he made it very clear that this is an FTA EIS. It's not a city EIS. As much as the city's doing the work for it, it is an FTA EIS that they control. The FTA's job is to work with the agencies that are deemed cooperating agencies in finishing that EIS. And so that's the last remaining issue that everyone's identified is in regards to the FAA, Aviation Administration. It's in regards to a section of the project that's just east of the runway as it runs through the Mapunapuna area. And again, you got to realize it's an area where buildings already exist within this zone. It's just a matter of adding an additional structure. And these buildings are actually taller than where the rail elevated system would be. So it's not a huge new structure in the area. It's just a matter of adding something. There are various options that are being considered by FAA. Mr. Rogoff said he is working with FAA to complete the issue. That FAA is, he said he talked to them earlier, is working hard on the issue and knows the timing for the city on those issues. So there we're hoping to have the FAA's final report and be able to move forward within a couple of weeks. I know that Director and Toru and the Mayor were going to follow up with the FTA to make sure that that happens. In regards to the financial plan, again, he noted under the FTA process, the financial plan is separate than the EIS. It gets combined a little bit when we get to the state side because the state laws are a little bit different than the federal laws on this. But he said the latest financial plan was the one the city submitted with their application to proceed into preliminary engineering. And he says this was noted in the letter that allowed us to go into preliminary engineering. The FTA has concerns about the financial plan. He says, but every project that goes into PE has concerns about their financial plan. That's why they go into PE, so that they can firm up some of the information and refine their financial plan during their preliminary engineering. And so to take that statement to say there's a problem with the project is not accurate. He did note, however, that we are going to have to improve our plan, and that there's the next two steps where updated financial plans are required are final design and at your full funding grant agreement. He says the tests or the requirements become more stringent at each step. So if we tried to take our financial plan that we had last year and turn it in for our final design approval, it's not going to work. But again, it's all just part of the process. And he said, even back last year, if FTA had significant problems with our financial plan, they would not have allowed us to go into PE. And we asked the question, has the FTA done that before? And yes, there are examples, including Dulles Airport and Seattle, where the FTA had such issues with their financial plan, they did not allow them to move into preliminary engineering on sections of their project. So he also noted, that they have done analysis on our financial plan. They've made certain judgment calls, which they understand. They've run it through various stress tests with differing scenarios. And so he says it's not just something we look at and say okay to. They do a pretty thorough analysis, both themselves and their independent auditors, for lack of a better term, to look at that. So I think that sort of, at least for me, helped paint a little better picture of what was going on with the financial plan relative to what we've heard from various news accounts and various quotes about that. Finally, I'd asked them, so what happens, what's the process once the EIS is released by the FTA? He says once it's completed, they'll release it. There's a 30-day review period in which they normally, historically, have taken comments from the cooperating agencies. But recent practice has been that they also allow comments from the public. Once that 30 days run, they are required to respond to all of the comments that they are received. And once all of those responses are issued, they can issue the ROD. And so he says the time it'll take between the end of that 30-day period and the ROD will obviously depend on what kind of how many comments come in and how detailed they have to get in their responses. But that sort of laid out the process from that point to getting our ROD, which would allow us to get into construction. He did note that, hey, what's going on with the governor's approval is under the state law, and that's not something the FTA worries about. It'll obviously be based upon the EIS. That's an FTA EIS, but that's not something that FTA has control over. And what the sort of the checklist or requirements are for approving the EIS from a state standpoint is something that we need to deal with locally. So I think those were the main points of the meeting. I think we'll be able to follow up on some of these questions and any other issues when we meet with him next week. Just so the committee is aware, I have asked the PIG members to submit any questions they want to ask or have dealt with submitted to my office, hopefully by the end of the day today, so that we can provide Mr. Rogoff with a list of here's what we're looking to talk about. I think that way he can be prepared, his staff can be prepared, we can have the most productive meeting as opposed to us just showing up and sort of talking off the top of our heads and throwing out questions.
So you will present him with the questions before you go there then?
Yeah, so my plan is to send those off to them by the end of this week, and so that they have Monday to prepare, and again, we'll meet with them on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think that's prudent because obviously his time is not unlimited, right? So you kind of just keep rambling on and asking questions that just come out of the blue, right?
Right.
And so you're coordinating the questions from the PIG?
Yes, so I have sent out a memo to the PIG members asking that those be submitted to my office, and we'll compile them and again, forward them to FTA. And again, it's an example. One of the reasons that we're now able, I think, to meet with Mr. Rogoff was originally he may not have been in town, but I know some of you may have heard that, and this came up at the end of last week when we were trying to meet with him, with the mayor. They had run out of funding. There was a Senate appropriation that provided for, I'm trying to pull up some information, some short-term temporary funding, and that didn't get passed through the Senate because there was at least there's a quote from a Republican senator about holding it up. And so Mr. Rogoff actually called us earlier in the day, Friday, asking if we could move up our meeting with him because he needed to deal with that, because he said, by Monday I may not have money, and they were potentially furloughing employees this week. And so I think because of that, his whole schedule got changed, and so he was going to be in town next week, and he says, hey, as long as I'm here, he's definitely willing to meet with council members when we come up. But also stresses the appointment. They're dealing with a lot of issues right now. We need to be time sensitive and efficient with the time we're going to have with him.
So his EIS process is separate from the state's, right? So if he goes through his process, can he issue the ROD without the state signing off on the state side of their EIS process?
Again, I just want to be careful for anyone watching that we don't confuse it. It is a separate process, but it's the same document. So it's not as if the city is doing one EIS document for the FTA and one EIS for the state. But again, they come under separate laws. There are separate steps. Technically, well, I did ask that exact question. They weren't sure. He was going to have his staff check. The guess, and this is purely a guess, was that technically they could do that because it is a separate FTA process. Practically, they probably wouldn't do that. And again, from a city standpoint, and I'm guessing a little bit here, is that even if we had the ROD, we couldn't start construction until we have finished our state EIS process. So even though we may be able to have documents signed in different orders, before we can groundbreak and get into construction, we need to have the FTA federal approval and the state approval, as I think has all been talked about before.
So since it's kind of a very separate kind of process, there's no way the FTA could advise on the appropriateness of what should be reviewed in the state EIS process, right?
Yes. No. I said he was very, I think, at least as I heard it, very clear that that's for the state, that's for the governor, that's for the city to deal with at the local level, not something that FTA is going to tell the state or city how to deal with the state requirements in regards to the EIS. But let me just share, and this is something I know the governor quoted on, was, she had asked, I think when she met with them, can we do this financial audit separate thing together? And his statement was, no, we have a federal process that comes under federal dollars. We need to follow that. And so while they agreed that they could share information, they weren't going to share in the cost or share in doing the actual study or whatever else the governor might want to do in regards to our financial plan.
Okay. Members, yes. Councilmember Cachola.
What will be our fallback or option if all of a sudden Secretary Rogoff has other pressing appointment and he will not meet with us?
Again, not able to go through all the scenarios. I think if he can't make it, I assume staff will still be able to meet with us.
So
Because we have the time blocked off, I, again, assume that they will still be able to, again, but there's a possibility that something so big is happening.
Yes.
Maybe they're furloughed, and they're not going to be there. I don't know. We will do our best. Obviously, the ideal scenario is to meet with staff and Administrator Rogoff.
And
if any of those pieces start falling off, we will continue to have that meeting as long as there's someone to meet
yes,
with.
as long as it's not definitely just Rogoff, because
Correct.
there's a
No,
possibility.
his staff will be
Yeah.
there with him.
The time is what time?
My understanding, this is getting finalized, and we'll have a memo out, but I think it's 1 o'clock with the administrator and his staff, 3 o'clock with Senator Akaka, and I think 4:15 with Senator Inouye.
Did you ask questions about the programmatic agreement?
I did,
And since I don't think we have all the signatories or okay of all the parties,
my understanding in regard, I asked the question, what's the status with the programmatic agreement? My understanding is that FTA has released the document for signature, and that all of the parties that have to sign that document are ready to sign. They were just waiting for FTA to actually send out the official document to sign. So my understanding is that those signatures are being done, and I don't know how that's routed and how that's taken care of this week, but it was a waiting point of waiting for FTA to release the document as opposed to any issues still being negotiated in regards to the document.
and the policy still applies that if one of those designated signatories is not going to sign, then it's not going to move.
And again, I don't know the details of this, and you could put these questions into the list of questions you want to ask. But my understanding is that, again, there's a set of entities that have to sign it, and obviously, if any of those entities don't sign it, then we're going to have to figure something out because it's not a complete document. But there are also additional signatories that are not required signatories, which, if those signatures do not come through, that does not stop that document process.
Hey, I know that we have to submit questions, but I'm leaving today. So is it possible that I can submit it later? Maybe instruct some.
Well, again, I would like to get it to the FTA offices by the end of this week, so by the end of the day tomorrow, so that when they get to their offices Monday morning, they have them, because that really only gives them 1 day to deal with it. And so, again, I mean, if it needs to come tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, that's fine. If it needs to extend beyond that, let's talk. Let me know, and let's talk to figure out how to deal with that.
Yeah. All right. Can I just come up with some of my things that should be discussed, like programmatic agreement, full funding grant agreement, funding, and then the final issuance of the final EIS. I'll just
on the quiz.
Wood, cooking, hauling water, and
Getting Z scores and everything. But now that you know how to
Like full funding grant agreement funding is
2 years. Although Texas and Indiana privatized parts of their system, the other similarities with Hawaii's proposal are
we hit the points we need to, so that we can come back and inform the council and the public about some of this information.
okay. I'll see what I can do.
Okay, no, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Further questions? Yeah, you should focus those questions down because you have very limited time. You don't want to just open it to a discussion, I mean, you're going to waste the whole time. So,
Right.
yeah. Okay, further questions?
Can we get
Councilmember
a copy
Cachuano.
of your report?
I will have a formal report written up, which is part of my travel report, which will be issued to everyone. So yes, you will have
Yeah,
it.
so that I can have it before I go. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we required to take public input? Yeah, anyone from the public wish to testify on this? Director, you have any comments you want to make? Yeah. Okay. With that, members, we've come to the end of our agenda. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.